You know, if the point of building a bus is so that you can start living life on the road, we all know you can't do that unless you got a place to lay your head at the end of a day. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about that space and everything that goes into building the best possible bed platform, sleeping configuration, whatever you want to call it, a dream machine into the machine of your dreams so you can get out there and live comfortably and get that beauty rest we all deserve. We're going to talk about the pros, the cons, the goods, the bads, the things you don't want to mess up because they might actually make you sick, and we don't want that. My name's Cassady. Don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to sleep on this video because we're going to be talking about things you can sleep on. Before we get started with all the tips and tricks you can follow when you're designing your sleeping space in your rig and building it, I want to first talk about the three main types of bed platforms available for you to choose from as you're planning out the interior of your build. The first of those is the most basic, the conventional, the fixed bed platform. That is an elevated platform of some type that does nothing but sit there. That's what I went for in my build because it has the right combination of pros and cons and trade-offs that I'm comfortable living with in this 28-foot bus. The big advantage of a fixed bed is that it's a bed and a bed only. It doesn't have to turn into anything else. At any point in time, I can go back there and take a nap. I don't have to put anything away. I don't have to move any pillows, unfold anything. It's ready to go. Additionally, any space under that bed is permanently available for storage. In my case, I'm going to be putting a lot under the bed. I'm going to have a 100-gallon water tank, my entire solar, electric, and battery setup, and I'm still going to have half of the underbed storage available to me for things like tools, luggage, all the things I got to bring with me as I'm living my life on the road. The fixed bed platform offers the most storage and the most convenience when you're trying to go to bed of all of these three options, and that's why I chose it. Now, the drawbacks of a fixed bed are pretty clear. It is a space that can do nothing but be a bed, and sometimes in much smaller rigs, you don't have that luxury and you have to identify a space and give it multiple purposes. But in my own build, I try to stay away from those types of things. The drawbacks of a convertible bed are big, and we'll get into those right now. A typical convertible bed is often going to be a couch and a bed at the same time, or a dinette and a bed at the same time. And while those two functions line up pretty easily, you don't have a tendency to be, needing to sit on a couch and go to bed at the same time. It is a bummer because if you want to do one, it means you can't do the other. And if there are two people living in a space, and one person wants to sit on a couch while the other person wants to go to bed, and your couch is your bed, well, you're gonna have some bargaining ahead of you. The, of course, big advantage is that in a small rig, especially in a really short bus or in a van, you can get dual functions out of that same quantity of space, like I was talking about earlier, that you designated for sleeping. That's really amazing. The drawback, though, is you're not gonna get as much storage. If you have a couch that turns into a bed, that usually means that the platform expands somehow, which means that the space under that platform is not always there and you can't use all of it for storage. Now, sure, you can fit a lot of stuff under a couch, but if I was building a couch bed or a convertible bed, I can tell you I wouldn't have room for all of my water, all of my electrical, and all of my tools. It's just simply not going to happen. You're also limited by the constraints of whatever else your bed has to be when it's not being a bed. So if it's going to be a couch, that means your bed probably can't be super tall. If it needs to be a dinette, that means that the bed probably can't be that wide. You might have an aisleway that you have to maintain walkway through, or you might have close proximity to things like your kitchen. That might be a little weird if you have somebody making breakfast and you're trying to stay in bed. Now, there are a lot of good reasons to go with the couch bed and a lot of good reasons to go with the fixed bed. Let's talk about the third option, which offers a hybrid of both, and that is an elevating bed or a bed platform that raises. There are a lot of companies out there that make these types of beds. One that I'm familiar with is made by a company called Happy Jack, and they make a good product, and it's a really useful way to get a second function out of a living space that would normally be occupied by a bed without some of the drawbacks that you have in a convertible bed situation. The Happy Jack uses 4 posts at one at each corner to raise up to a queen-size bed up and down. The cool thing here is that you can have a bed always made and ready to go and put it up and out of the way without having to hide pillows or unmake the bed or fold up blankets. You push a button, it raises up, revealing the space underneath. Now, most commonly that space underneath will be something like a couch or a dinette or a workspace or an office. and that's great, but that means we will run into some of the problems I was talking about earlier, where if somebody wants to be working in the office and you want to be asleep, you're going to have to negotiate and decide who gets to do what. It also means that you are going to lose up some of that permanent storage that I love so much in my fixed bed platform, because once that bed goes up, all the space below it goes from storage to living space that you have to be able to move through, obviously, which means you can't fill it full of tanks and electrical equipment and tools. The Happy Jack system is really cool, and I've seen it well done on a lot of rigs. One of the bigger drawbacks, though, of course, is that it's expensive. And it is also complicated, and it's a machine that uses electricity, and if it breaks, well, you might be stuck with the bed up against the ceiling, or you might be stuck with a bed in your living room and no way to fix that. Now, all of these have their pros and have their cons, and picking what's right for you, well, that's up to you. My goal here is to give you the pros and cons of each so that you can be happy knowing that you chose the best of the available options with the trade-offs that are going to work best for your life in the rig. Whew! Now that we've talked about all of the different kinds of bed options out there, let's talk about some pro tips when you're constructing and designing your sleeping area so that you can have the maximum amount of comfort and enjoyment when you're catching your beauty rest. Well, now that you've picked what type of bed platform you want to put in your rig, let's talk about some tips for you to keep in mind when you're designing that space so that whatever bed platform you choose to build works the best for you. And we'll start by talking about the hallmarks of a good sleeping situation. The first thing is, of course, it's got to be sturdy. There's no doubt about that, and I think we can all imagine what it takes to build a sturdy bed platform, but I see a lot of people overbuilding their bed platforms. Lots of 2x4s supporting everything. You know, your spans are not as long as they could be, and you're putting too much material and too much weight into your build. Now, in a bigger bus like mine, weight's not such a big deal, but if you're building out a short bus, like a 4-window or a single rear axle bus, every pound you can save is a pound you don't have to lug around and a pound you could spend on something else, so you definitely want to keep that in mind. And I'll show you in my bus how I do that when we get there. Another hallmark of a good bed platform is making sure that you have ventilation for the mattress to breathe and dry out. Here in Colorado, it's not such a big deal, but if I'm up in the Pacific Northwest, say, or it's the middle of winter and there's a lot of humidity in my rig, that's all going to be absorbed by the mattress, especially as I sleep on it. And if the bottom of that mattress doesn't have a way to vent, you're going to get mold down there, and that's something that could really make you sick. So a really good bed platform is going to have ventilation down there, and there's two ways you can do that. One of them is by doing a slat style platform construction where you use slats across your joist that support the bed. Another one is drilling a bunch of holes in there. My favorite option is doing a solid bed platform and using something like Dendri or some other type of mattress ventilation system, which is a pad that's permeable that you put under the mattress that helps it ventilate. That is a crucial thing to include in any good bed platform design. On top of that, and along those same lines, I highly recommend having ventilation nearby. Windows are my favorite way to ventilate a sleeping space, and hopefully you've got those in your rig, but if you don't, at least make sure you've got a MaxxAir or some other type of vent nearby to help deal with all of that humidity that you're introducing into your living space as you're there sleeping. Another really important component of successful bed platform design is making sure you have enough space in and around the bed to do what you need to do. You want to make sure that you can sit up in bed if you can. That's going to be really useful in a lot of different situations. You also want to leave yourself space around the side of the bed so that you can make your bed. And if at all possible, make sure that the size of bed you choose is going to be big enough for what you're doing. Now, I don't know about you or the kind of sleeper that you are, but I couldn't sleep in anything smaller than a queen size mattress. I'm just a little too tall for that. I see a lot of people in here making huge sacrifices by putting in a small bed thinking that it will work in their rig, and I think a lot of people, I know I've talked to people who regret putting in too small of a bed into their rig. Make sure it's long enough, tall enough, wide enough for you to sleep comfortably, or you'll really regret it. Some other good bed platform pro tips are making sure you've got power outlets nearby. You've got phones to charge, although we shouldn't be sleeping next to them, right? Maybe you've got a laptop or something that you're going to use when you're in bed, or maybe you like to watch TV and movies in your bed. Make sure you've got the things to plug in there. Now, I also like to have a glass of water near me when I'm sleeping, so I like to put a shelf near my bed as well. And another thing that's really crucial to keep in mind, especially if your rig doesn't have leveling jacks, and mine doesn't, is make a bed that you can, if you need to, sleep in multiple configurations. My bed will be set up preferably for my head to be on the passenger side, but if I need to, I will be able to put my head on the driver's side and still have a shelf and still have power available on that side as well. And that's really important to me because I hate sleeping with my feet above my head. And having that flexibility means I should hopefully never find myself in that situation. Now, what are some of the biggest mistakes that I see being made when people design their bed platforms? Now, the biggest one, like I said earlier, is designing one that doesn't have ventilation. If your mattress is sitting on a solid surface, I can virtually guarantee you that in any climate except for Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, you're gonna get mold under your mattress, especially in the wintertime when indoor relative humidity is significantly higher, especially if you're keeping your bus or whatever rig you're in sealed up and airtight to keep all that heat in. Another big mistake that I see is not leaving enough vertical clearance above your bed for happiness. You want to be able to sit up in your bed, especially if you're gonna be sharing your bed with somebody else. It's a really important feature that you don't want to miss out on. Now, if you're going to be installing anything else near your bed, like a mini split, which I will be doing, make sure that you've got clearance around that mini split so you can sit up without bonking your head. In my bus, it's going to be tighter than I'd like it, but that was a trade-off that I'm comfortable with, and I'm okay with that because my queen-size mattress gives me enough width that I can just scoot to the side if I need to sit up and don't want to hit my head on the mini split. Those are some essential pro tips if you want to design the optimal space for your bed platform to exist in. Now, with that said, let me take you around to the back of my bus. I just finished building the bed platform back there, and I'll show you how I built my fixed bed platform. I really like this method because it uses a minimum of materials, it's quick to put up, and it's a clear span underneath, which means I can put all the storage I want down there without worrying about having to clear vertical support posts holding up my bed platform. Let's go take a look at that. All right, so this behind me is my bed platform, and it doesn't look like much from here, but that's because it really isn't much. I designed this bed platform to be simple, easy to construct, and use a minimum of materials. On the left and right side of the bed platform, what I've done is I've taken 3/4 inch plywood and I've cut essentially slots into that piece of plywood. I've cut 3 of those slots into the plywood, and those slots are for a piece of 1x2 inch 16 gauge square steel tubing that sets in those slots. That tubing is really strong, it's really lightweight, and it has the strength I need to make the span all the way across the width of my bus without support. And because it's setting down into the pockets on those pieces of plywood that are screwed very securely into my walls, it's got bearing and it's not relying on any types of glues or adhesives or fasteners to keep those secure and fixed. If you look in there, you can see I've got a lot of screws holding those cut pieces of plywood on the side of my wall. Each one of those screws has the ability to probably hold 40 to 50 pounds easily, especially in that shear load, which is what it has now. And I've got probably about a dozen screws on each side holding that up. And around the perimeter, I also have another piece of 3/4 inch plywood on the back that acts as the support on the very backmost part of the wall. And the top is constructed of just a piece of 1/2 inch plywood that rests directly on top of that. I really like this because it gives me a clear span, it doesn't take a lot of materials to execute, and it gives me all the strength I need without taking up any more space and weight than it has to. I really recommend a setup like this if you're considering doing a fixed bed platform. Challenge yourself to get away from 2x4 based construction because 2x4s really don't have a place in any part of a bus, at least in my opinion. Go down to the Home Depot, pick up some 1x2 rectangular steel in the 16 gauge, cut it to length, cut some notches and some plywood and screw it to the walls, drop them on. You can build a bed platform like this in just a couple of hours, and it's gonna last you the duration of your rig's lifetime and give you a lot of good nights of quality rest and be super sturdy. Whew. Hot dog, hot dog. Well, that's gonna do it for this week's video discussing the finer points of constructing the ultimate sleeping situation in your rig. But before we get out of here, I wanna give a shout out to all of those people who choose to support this channel at the top tier over on Patreon. It does a lot more than you can imagine to help keep these videos coming out in a semi-regular basis. So in no particular order, my Warland Warriors are Joshua Trainer, Sean Randall, Graydon DeWolf, Chance, Shanti Moves, Mitchell Allison, Scott Shearer, Kitty and Moxie, Desiree, Jessica, Williard Williams, Marcus Henderson, CDO75, Corey Mullins, Edward Aloco, Tyler Johnson, Kyle, Cody Thompson, Patrick Wiley, Gian Mario, Swirly01, James Seidel, Steve Drumheller, Dan Burkett, Zachary Taylor, The Happy Fractal, Chad Foss, and Gypsy. Thank you so much for your support over there on Patreon. We really appreciate it. And if you like this video, make sure you tune in next time because we got lots more information coming your way on how you can build the ultimate home on wheels out of an old school bus like this one.